While turbochargers are the dominant power adder in today's society, this wasn't always the case. We're going to go back to 1971 when Ohio George Montgomery created the first twin-turbo Boss 429 Mustang. It is awesome. Ohio George Montgomery really needs no introduction. He won the U.S. Nationals 4 times during his career, with the high water mark coming in 1969 with the Mustang Mr. Gasket Gasser, powered by the 427 single overhead cam engine. He knew that if he was going to remain competitive in this class, he was going to have to think outside of the box and come up with a completely different engine program. This led to the idea of the Boss 429 twin turbo. So let's take a look at the Hot Rod 1971 issue that outlines this build. George began development work on the Boss 429 with his son. He knew that he wanted to be different than the rest of his competition, and 2, he wanted to know that the engine could support the mega power that he was intending on creating with this new combination, as the 427 camera could not. But in order to do this, he knew that he was going to have to bring someone in from the outside, enter Danny Jones into the equation. He was a Ford engineer that worked with the Ford Indy team, and when Ford quit racing, Ohio George was fortunate enough to get him on the team to do the necessary turbo development work for this engine. Danny's first order of business was actually sizing the turbos for this combination. They knew they needed to make this engine make as much power as possible naturally aspirated, so that when they put the turbos on it, that it would perform at the levels that they were expecting. This thing was truly a work of art. Using a Switzer designed turbo, which is now known as Borg-Warner, and Bendix fuel injection, everything had to be totally fabricated themselves. From the intake manifold to the injector plumbing, everything that you see in these photos were all done by Danny, George, and his son. Once they got this combination together, their work didn't stop there. They had to do immense dyno testing on runner lengths for the intake manifold, different configurations for the camshaft, you name it, they did it. But once they had this engine in the car and took it to the track, it was obvious it was a monster. The engine was producing 15 to 1600 horsepower, and it was undrivable. George has been quoted as saying that he had to remove 400 horsepower out of the car to make it down to quarter mile. And this is due to the fact that it had a C6 automatic transmission, the tire technology wasn't up to snuff back then, and the turbo technology, given that this was a non-intercooled setup. George would take his twin-turbo Mustang to the winner's circle at the 73 and 74 Gator Nationals. It was so impressive that NHRA outlawed that combination in the future, but George paved the way for the modern-day Pro Mod, and racing has been changed ever since.